Hi, I'm Wes the and this is the Backlog. For those unfamiliar, this was a series that I stopped doing over a year ago, until I pivoted to primarily Mega Man content, where I try to knock at least one title off of my spreadsheet per week to whittle down the list of games that I had purchased but hadn't played yet, discussing each as I did so. It was kind of a random, untimely series of reviews that held me accountable of doing something other than just accumulating games that I'd never had the time for, and making my focus a bit more specific was definitely a good move. But I'm bringing it back, for 1 week only, as a bit of a year-end review, so hey, please humor me and put up with a bit of a self-audit before we return to business as usual. I promise to keep it at least a little relevant. While most people say that 2023 was a great year for games, for me it was a really weird one. I originally wanted to do a list of my favorite new titles, but thinking back, I realized that I didn't really play much stuff that I actually liked, outside of some random indie games that I can't remember when I actually got around to, so that's kind of out. Maybe it's because I don't like open world and crafting titles, maybe it's because my PS4 is now obsolete, making my Switch the only modern console I own, but still, the things I picked up seem more bent on challenging some of the points I made in what I look for in a game video. I say the price per hour isn't all that important, and I get a lot of titles that just didn't feel worth the price of admission. WarioWare Move It being only $50, yet me completing it in around 2 hours, making me feel really. Of course, maybe if the game didn't feel so bad to play with its motion controls, I would have felt more compelled to do post-game stuff, of which there wasn't much. But outside of the DIY title, this is only the second one in the series where I was pretty much done as soon as I hit credits. Come to think of it, did DIY have a proper campaign? And I got that one discounted too, so it hurt less. Then there was Sonic Superstars, a game that cost $60 that I bought for $40 and would have regretted at $20. I heard a lot of people saying that the bosses sucked but the rest of the game was good, though I can't really recall having any fun in the 4 hours it took to beat. If other people liked it though, I'm happy for them, and I still have the Origins collection to play. And I know I like the Genesis titles. With Detective Pikachu Returns, it's less a question of length as gameplay being unengaging. That game does exactly one thing right. I really like seeing Pokemon just hanging out, living their lives day to day, but the actual story plays like a mystery title written for babies, too young to read, and with this being a game that relies heavily on text, that essentially means that it has no target audience. I have to wonder if, after the success of the movie, the Pokemon Company realized that they never finished the story they began on the 3DS and just squirted this one out. I still have a chapter and a half left to clear, so I hope they wrap this up. I'm not sure I can do a third of these. The Super Mario RPG remake was also a little disappointing. Not because it wasn't fun, it just felt too basic. It upped the graphics, and the redone music was also nice, but most of the other changes they made were so small that it's hard to remember and list them out. And the big ones, the AoE timed hits and the gauge attacks made the game so much easier that I imagine that's why it went from having an average playtime of 17.5 hours to just 12. I myself did one playthrough on stream in 10, and one on my own, without needing to do stupid voices, in 9. For $60, it just felt like they should have done more, and at the very least, the runtime shouldn't have been shorter. There are some boss rematches that I haven't gotten around to yet, so maybe that'll be enough to make a difference, but I somehow doubt it. Plan on doing a video on remakes sometime soon though, so if it does, I'll let you know. The Pokemon Violet DLC was another one that I had a lot of fun with, but I don't think it did enough to justify the price. I like Pokemon and enjoyed the new characters and folklore introduced. It was mostly just more of the same though. More running around, hucking balls, fighting guys, with people still reporting the same bugs, maybe even more, and I myself experiencing them off and on, almost like someone was flipping a switch on my console. Maybe a more in-depth look at my opinion on pricing is another video I should do. I think the most disappointing of all, though, was Pikmin 4. While I'm a huge proponent of difficulty options, I kinda think it needs to go both ways, and with how easy and dumbed down this entry was, I didn't really have a good time with it. Even with me handicapping myself by not using Ice Pikmin to freeze enemies and being majorly sleep deprived throughout most of my playthrough, I still felt pretty bored for most of the runtime, and the excessive dialogue didn't help either. There were 4 or 5 parts that I found actually hard, and even then, it felt more annoying than challenging. While replaying things on a full night's sleep might help a little, that'll likely only make the obnoxious parts feel a little more tolerable, not more challenging. I think Pikmin 4 kinda sums up games for me this year. Most people raving about how great it was, while me just feeling very confused, but happy that everybody else seemed to have a good time. That's not to say that there weren't some games that I managed to enjoy. There were 4 I really liked, assuming I'm not forgetting anyone, so you can consider this my short list of my favorite games of the year. The first, Fire Emblem Engage, I actually kinda thought came out last year until my brother Sam reminded me otherwise. The gameplay was, well, engaging. It having some really cool maps and the emblem rings making it so that you could either buff units by reinforcing what they could already do well, or compensate for what they couldn't. I played the game on Hard Classic, and found the title really challenging, though that might have been in part due to me not messing with some of the game's mechanics. My ADHD not letting me do stuff like meticulously crafting custom weapons after every chapter saw me unintentionally completing a challenge run due to my lack of attention span, but I still found it really fun and rewarding to get myself into situations that should have ended me, and bang my head against the wall until I miraculously found a solution. Was it dumb luck? Was it my innate genius? You decide. I don't want to praise it too much though, since gameplay is only half of what I look for in these titles, writing being the other part, and this one read like bad fanfic. Some scenarios felt inconsistent, yet a lot of the plot was still predictable. The units were shallow to the point of feeling more like tropes than characters, and they tried to add some redemption in for bad guys that really should have been condemned to the deepest reaches of hell. To say nothing of the whole return of the series favorites coming back to be your super best friends and think that you're a super cool guy. Overall, it probably had some of the best gameplay, yet worst writing, making it kind of a mixed bag, but I did have fun. Not enough to get the DLC though, since I'm pretty sure that would have devolved into the situation I mentioned before with Pokemon. Mega Man X Dive was my pleasant surprise of the year. Mega Man being my favorite thing ever, yet not even that being enough to get me to pick up a gacha game. I figured I might eventually give it a try for a video, avoid spending any money on it, and quit in disgust a few hours in, since from what I hear, it's hard to make any progress in the online version without spending cash. Before I could get to that point though, offline was announced, which solved my existential crisis. I'd always rather pay a flat fee than it being free but with no upper limit to how much I choose to spend. I think $30 was perfect for it. It not having very deep gameplay, but there being a lot of content there that you can sink a lot of time into if you're so inclined. And while some complain that this was too much for a free-to-play game, unlocking everything would have previously cost either a ton of time or money, whereas here, I think I had the whole roster available about 20 hours in. While definitely not for everybody, I like Mega Man enough that all the characters and references here make it worth my while, plus I like games that I can just kind of zone out and play for as long or little as I want. I already have over 70 hours in. Then, for the only Game of the Year nominee I've actually played, there was Mario Wonder. It's a solid platformer, meaty enough and with enough variety to justify its price tag. The number of Wonder effects, which are triggered when you touch a Wonder Seed and cause some weird mechanics to occur, are staggering. Some show up a few times, some are one-hit wonders, no pun intended, but they're different enough from the base level that each one makes it feel more like 2 stages rather than 1. And I think every level has one too, well, outside of those crappy group hide-and-seek levels. There's also a bunch of badges you can equip to customize how you play the game, and while they all play the same, it's fun to try out all the different characters. Well, outside of Nabbit because I didn't want a handicap, and Yoshi because I didn't want a handicap in their abominations. And while there aren't too many power-ups, I did enjoy messing around with each of the ones that were there. The game's not perfect. There are those group levels I mentioned. I wish there were more than 3 bosses, 2 of which get used over and over again, and whoever designed that final challenge can go to hell, though I did bring it on myself. But it was still a ton of fun to play, so much so that I actually went so far as to 100% this one. And finally, you know what I'm about to say, the Mega Man Battle Network Collection came out this year, and it was a blast to play through. Well, mostly. 1's a little rough, and 4's one of the worst Mega Man games ever made, in my bottom 3. But the rest, well, the rest are just fantastic. They kind of invented their own genre, me referring to them as grid-based, deck-building action RPGs, which I'm not even sure is a technical term, but the only other games I've seen similar to this are homages to the series, like One Step from Eden. These games were a big part of my adolescence, and with all the content each has, from the main story campaign, to the different transformations, to post-game, to all the collectibles, each feels jam-packed, and while my favorite Legacy collection is probably the first X one, these probably give you the most bang for your buck. I could talk about each at length, and in fact I do, check out my reviews. But what I'm really saying here is that my Game of the Year is a set of collections of 10 games, 7 of which I like, from about 20 years ago. Go figure. Now here's where I need to actually take account for myself, and wow, I am a failure. My last episode of the Backlog was on August 17, 2022, and I was almost at my goal of under 100. It's sitting at just 109, and as of writing this, it's back to 160, which might actually be higher than when I started the series. As for how it got to this, part of it was the closure of two eShops, both the 3DS and Wii U. There were a lot of frantic, last-minute purchases after meticulously poring over the catalogs of both. More than that though, it was all the Mega Man. I spent a lot of time playing Mega Man so I could make videos of Mega Man, streaming Mega Man to make clip shows of Mega Man, reading up on Mega Man so I could cover Mega Man more thoroughly. And while I don't regret it since I enjoy Mega Man, that's why I covered the franchise, I do wish I managed my time a bit better. As it stands, there were a lot of games that I would see, think looked interesting, then impulse buy when they went on sale, which brings us to today. I might need to balance my time better, or at least get better about my spending habits. Sure, I can play them all when I retire, like I keep telling people, but who knows whether I'll even have the skills or desire to do so when I get there. Oh, and as of for books, I have 21 to read through at the moment, so I think I at least kept pace there. So now for a look back at 2023 and a list of goals for 2024. According to my year-end report, the channel got around 200 new subscribers this year, which, that was a few weeks ago, so I'm gonna say we started at around 300. At just over 550 at the moment, so that's not too bad. Next year, I'm gonna try for 1,000, hopefully that doesn't sound too arrogant. Thanks for everybody who did subscribe, by the way. I meant to do something for 500, but I've just been really busy. If I get to 1K, I'm thinking of streaming all the mainline classic games back to back. And hey, if it happens to be close to the end of the year, I can do that as part of my Extra Life 24-hour marathon, which I did solo this year. Kinda regret not doing more with that, so this'll be 2 goals in 1. As for videos, the Ranking the Classic games was my most popular from this year, but the one that got the most watch time overall was the Ranking.EXE games. While that's great, I'd like to outdo it this year, and I have a few ideas, though the one will definitely get some people yelling at me again in the comments. Oh well, sometimes you gotta break some eggs. As for specific video stuff, in addition to possibly dipping into some fan things and ways to play games that I can't currently record, I want to mess around with the Poems format I tried out a few weeks back to review some other platformers. The more Mega Man-esque the better. And I also want to look into putting out some shorts since I hear those are a good way to get some extra traction. Also need to decide whether I want to continue to post clip shows to the channel, or if that screws up the algorithm and I should do so elsewhere. Also, finish some of the scripts on all those planned out ideas I have. Perhaps most significantly though, I kinda want to put a face to some of my content, be it an animated avatar or my actual face. And some of my older videos already have actual footage of me, so it wouldn't be a big reveal or anything. But still, which to go with? I feel just getting a webcam and figuring out a simple lighting setup would be easiest and the least objectionable, but I'd also have to make sure that I'm looking sharp whenever I do. An avatar would make it easier on days when I'm feeling a bit gross, due to either needing to shave or wash my hair. Maybe the best course would be to do both. A live feed on days when I'm looking particularly dapper, or with games that actual facial expressions would add a lot to. And something digital when I'm feeling a bit lazier, though I'd need to decide on whether to do a PNG tuber, a VTuber, a Toon tuber, or some other type of tuber model. Then again, this would all hinge on my ADHD not being the bane of progress and actually letting me draw up a design, so I guess we'll see. But with this especially, I'd welcome input. Feel free to leave it for any of the other stuff I talk about too. Oh, and if I do wind up showing off something, it'll probably be more prevalent over on the streaming channel, The Victory Tricksters. We're almost at 100 subscribers over there, so it'd be swell if you stopped on by. As for more personal goals, I want to knock out Legends 2 and Mega Man and Bass, the only mainline and platformer titles in the franchise that I have yet to clear. As for my backlog, I won't try to overreach and say that I want to finally get it down to less than 100, but down to at most 120 hopefully isn't too ambitious. Might try to stream some of the shorter platformers, especially the Mega Man-esque ones, like Shield Maiden, Gravity Circuit, and 30XX if I can get away with it. And completely unrelated to gaming, I want to exercise a bit more frequently. Yeah, it's pretty much the most basic you can get with a resolution, but darn it, I want my abs back. I had some in my 20s until the hernia happened and everything atrophied while I was recovering. It's not stinking fair, I worked so hard for them. That'll do it for my self-indulgent little recap. Thanks for putting up with it. Hopefully next year I play enough good stuff to do a proper countdown, but since I'm not planning on shelling out for a PS5 anytime soon, my choices will probably be limited again. Oh well, I won't ask anyone to subscribe, since I can't imagine anyone watching this unless they already are, so I'll just say thanks as always for watching, and Happy New Year's! Weird to think that we're living in the 20XX, isn't it?